At IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, प्रभाव एवं नीति अनुसंधान संस्था नई दिल्ली extend my warmest welcome to you all to IMPRI Web Policy Talk. We are gathered today for IMPRI's fourth annual series of thematic deliberations and analysis of Interim Union Budget Financial Year 2024-25. This discussion is organized by the IMPRI Center for Habitat, Urban and Regional Studies as a part of IMPRI Web Policy Talk series. I welcome all of you to this enlightening deliberation and thank you for tuning into this discussion. The chair for this session is Dr. J. Dennis Rajakumarji, Visiting Senior Fellow, IMPRI. Now, let me introduce the esteemed gathering. Shri Ramanjaneyulu GV, Executive Director, Center for Sustainable Agriculture, Dr. Parashram Patil ji, Economist, Food and Agriculture Organization, United Nations, Professor Santosh K. Singh ji, Visiting Professor, IMPRI, Dr. Donthi Narasimha Reddy ji, Visiting Senior Fellow, IMPRI, Dr. Anamika Priyadarshini ji, Senior Specialist Researcher at the Center for Catalyzing Changes Sakshama Initiative, Professor Nalin Bharti ji, Professor at Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, Indian Institute of Technology, Patna, Dr. Javed Alam Khan ji, Visiting Senior Fellow, IMPRI. Welcome to all of you. We look forward to learning from our esteemed gathering. Now, without any further ado, let us start the program. It is my honor and privilege to invite Dr. J. Dennis Rajakumarji to start the program with the chair's opening remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ritvika. Good afternoon, friends. Welcome to this panel discussion on rural realities and interim union budget. I remember we had, I think this is a topic on which IMPRI is conducting panel discussion year on year. It's a good initiative. I hope that they will continue this in the years to come. Friends, as we know that what we had been seeing during the last few days is a lot of write-up on the union budget. Essentially, we are talking about an interim budget. Normally, the incumbent government uses union budget in the election year to showcase their successes. So it is not a surprising thing to see in the union budget a lot more rhetoricism on what has happened during the not only last year, but also during the last 10 years. And we should be also mindful of the fact that this interim budget is basically a vote on accounts. And therefore, one may not actually expect a lot of drastic fiscal initiatives to find place in this budget. At the same time, the topic of today's discussion is so vital and relevant as it will be, I'm sure that all of you will appreciate the relevance of the topic. As we all know that rural economy in India particularly has both the demand and supply linkages with the rest. The resilience of the rural sector matters a lot for the economy as a whole. As I said, it has got both demand and supply linkages. So in order to understand what is happening in the rural economy, we need to actually, it is better if you look at some statistics, which will actually throw some lights on both sides, demand as well as on the supply side. Now, I wish to highlight 3 points here. One is what is the kind of economic activities that we witness in the rural economic sector. Second one is what is the kind of employment situation we are witnessing in the rural sector. And the third more important point is what is happening to the wage rates in the rural sector. So I think if we'll go over some statistics covering these aspects, I'm sure that this will give us some perspective to see what the budget has provided and where it can actually, whether it is the budget will be capable of addressing some issues faced by the rural sector. Now, we know concerning about economic activities of the rural sector, we know that both farm and non-farm activities drive the rural economy. The problem in the way that statistics are made available in our national account statistics is that uh, since it is they combine both organized and non-organized sectors in non-farm sector, it will be very difficult for us to isolate the extent of rural component from the non-farm sector. So therefore, we need to look at some primary activity which can actually reflect the rural sector. I'm basically talking about agriculture, for which we are having a separate set of activities available under the economic activities. And also we know that uh, uh, more than 94% of the agricultural activities are rural sector based. And according to the recent release of NSO, I'm actually referring to the advanced estimates for the year 2023-24. What we see is agricultural sector is expected to grow at the rate of 1.8% compared to 4% which was recorded in the last few years. And when we see it over the last few years, then we find that this is the lowest growth rate we find in the last 7 or so years. And there are some reasons attributed to that. Monsoon did not favor the agriculture this time. So there is going to be a bit of disruption in the supply. Now, talking about employment, we do have some statistics on the rural employment available in periodic labor force survey, PLFS. And what we see here in PLFS is that if you are considering labor force participation rate, LFPR, as an indicator in rural sector, then we find that there's a very satisfying phenomena we see. LFPR has been on the rising trend from 37% in 2017-18 to 43.4% in 2022-23. Definitely, this is far better compared to the urban sector. Simultaneously, the unemployment rate has also come down from 5.3% to 2.4%. As I said, it's a very satisfying phenomenon what we see. Rural employment has picked up. But then the related question is, what about the quality of employment? Then the question is, how do you understand the quality of employment? Right. I'm actually taking wage rate to reflect the quality of employment. So here, I'm basically looking at two major activity for which we are having some statistics of rural wage rates. And these statistics I have taken from the wage rates in rural India. Since we know that there's a long delay in the arrival of these statistics, as of now, I have to rely on the statistics we have for the month of March to 2023. I'm taking two major activities out of this. One is ploughing, which is related to primary agriculture activity. Another activity I'm taking mason, which is related to non-farm sector. So if you look at ploughing wage rate, it has actually it has gone up by 6.6% on year-on-year basis in March 2023. That is about I'm talking about statistics pertaining to 8 months uh, 8 months ago. So, and if you are looking at the wage rate of mason, you'll find that there is an increase of 5.5%. That is from 550 rupees to 580 rupees. So if we have to take wage rate for plowing as a kind of indicator for rural agriculture activity, then we see that it has gone up by 6.6%. Whereas if you are looking at mason as a kind of indicator for non-farm activity, then the wage rate has gone up by 5.5%. This is on year-on-year basis. But then, if you actually benchmark with the GDP growth rate, or the other option is we can benchmark to cost of living index of agriculture labor. Now, for the full year to 2020 to 23, cost of living index has gone up by 6.6%. So, which means it leads us, when we compare these numbers, an important question that comes up here is, though we find there is a kind of increase in the wage rates, both in the farm sector as well as in the non-farm sector, but then the increase what we observe in the cost of living, it actually beats the increase in the wage rates. So the question is whether rural workers are becoming better off or worse off is left to us to contemplate. Now, there is another way of looking at what's happening in the rural sector, that is the inflation. The overall CPI inflation in rural sector is 5.9%, that is in December 2023, whereas food inflation in the rural sector is 9.5%, and it is not very much different in the urban sector. So overall, we are talking about food inflation in the range of 9 to 9.5% in the country as a whole. Many people would tend to think that if food inflation is very high, then the farmers will become better off because they tend to have a decent share in the food inflation. But in a recent survey of RBI, what an interesting results had come out. According to the survey, the farmers' share in the food inflation will be about 1/3 to 70%, but again depending upon the crops. So it is not that entire food inflation is wholly, absorbed by farmers, right, and thereby they become better off. No, that's also wrong. So here, therefore, what we are seeing through these statistics, very minimum statistics that I have presented is one, since the rural sector is vital for the Indian economy, given its supply and demand linkages, we find that it is very likely that both aspects are going to be seriously affected. In other words, can we say that when we talk about rural reality, can we say that there is a feel good factor, or can we say that there is a rural crisis? Probably we can keep these issues in our mind and look at and discuss various aspects present in the budget. We know that budget has addressed several issues related to rural sector. In fact, if you see the uh, allocation made for both rural development, Ministry of Rural Development as well as Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, the combined allocation is over 3 lakh crore. And there are a lot of other ministries where the spillover effect is there, and many sectors where they spend money, many ministries where they spend money, they spill over to the rural sector, and therefore they actually provide a kind of boost to the rural economy. So, not accounting for that, if you are looking at these two ministries, then we see that over 3 lakh is what is being allocated. It's a good move, and there are a lot of issues highlighted in the budget as well. I'll stop here and let me actually invite all the panelists to give their views on on what budget holds insofar as the rural sector is concerned. I have highlighted three major issues, right? And probably it's all up to you. However you want to uh, highlight these issues, you are most welcome. As the organizer had informed me, there are three names which I need to call out to speak first. So the first person to go will be Dr. Anamika. I think she has to leave at 4 o'clock. So Dr. Anamika, over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Rajakumar. Thanks a ton for setting this context, setting the tone for today's webinar. And thank you so much, Dr. Arjun and everybody at IMPRI for having us here and organizing this very important deliberation, I would say. A lot has already been, briefed, and I was planning to give an overview of the rural development and agricultural budget for this year, but I would kind of keep it shorter because a lot has already been shared by Dr. Rajakumar. Overall, if we look at what has been allocated for rural development and agriculture, although it's a good move, but then usually the trend in the recent past had been that 6% of the total budget would go to this particular sector. And I'm not talking just about the ministry, but overall the expenditure on rural development and infrastructure would comprise at least 6%. But this year it's a little less than that. That is one. In fact, but if we see other programs, we see that either there is no change or very marginal change. And it sounds logical also because it's an interim budget, and we can hope that the post-full election full budget will have, clearer allocation of funds on various heads. One good news in this budget was remarkable rise in the capital expenditure outlay, which is not specifically for rural development, but at the same time, we can assume that it would help in generating employment in rural India also, because it's huge. I mean, now from 9.4 lakh crore to it has increased to 11.1 lakh crore. And the assumption is that this will help in developing infrastructure and contributing to rural development by generating employment both in rural and urban India. As Dr. Rajkumar has already pointed out, that unemployment rate has declined, employment opportunities have also increased, but then he also indicated that we do not know if it is a feel-good factor or a crisis. One point here I would like to raise is that out-migration from many parts of the country is a reality. That's in many parts of rural India, especially in northern part of the country, out-migration is kind of a trend. So, and COVID crisis has also reiterated that many migration is in a very crisis situation. So maybe people are looking for employment, but they are not finding employment, and therefore they are migrating. So that's another kind of catch. We are seeing that, okay, unemployment rate has declined, employment has increased, but at the same time, are there people to, claim for that employment or avail that employment? So I think there should be special initiative to generate employment in rural India. And we all know that one of the most important programs that played a very critical role in generating employment is MNREGA. And the good thing is that there is no change in the budgetary allocation for MNREGA. It was 6,000 crore last year, and it is 6,000 crore this year. But then we need to remember that as per last year, I think January 2023's data, in our country, there are more than 27 crore registered MNREGA workers. And again, I'll go back to the COVID crisis when reverse migration was happening, when lockdown was there, when there was a huge economic crisis. We know that how MNREGA helped in boosting the rural economy. Kind of, it emerged as a survivor, savior. It's not survivor, as a savior. So I think it would be great if we focus a little bit more on MNREGA, and we can only hope that in the full budget, we will have more allocation for these more than 27 crore registered workers. I work on gender, so I will like to focus a little bit more about gender issues. And we all know that rural women's empowerment has been a very important agenda of the government. I think 21st century India did witness a remarkable shift in priorities around women's empowerment, and it has emerged as a very prominent agenda of the government. And this focus is quite clearly visible in interim budget. About 3 lakh crore has been allocated for gender budget, and now it is 6.5% of the total expenditure. And even if we look at GDP, it is almost 1%. So the country had never witnessed such boost on gender budget. And there are many policies which are directly benefiting women, and there are some policies which are, the major beneficiaries of these policies are women. For instance, if we look at Mudra Yojana, that about 43 crore loans will be, given, up to 10 lakh rupees loans will be given to people for non-farm income generation activities. And out of that 43 crore loans, 30 crore will be women beneficiaries. So here also women constitute a major proportion of the total beneficiaries. That's a very good move, I would say. Another women-specific program is Day NRLM, or Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana, in which all that also saw a 918 crores rise since the last fiscal year, and now that this policy has received 15,000 crore. This scheme is definitely going to, extremely poor women would be benefited from this scheme. The idea is to create self-help group of women and facilitate them to earn kind of a sustainable income and appreciable income. Another similar scheme is Lakhpati Didi scheme. That also was a good move. In this scheme, women self-help group are, received a loan and they are supported to establish non-farm enterprises and earn at least 1 lakh per annum per head. So allocation for this scheme has also increased from 2 crore to 3 crore. And so far, 10 million women have been benefited from this Lakhpati Didi scheme. And the idea is to reach out to more than 20-30 million women in the next few years. Then in the last 14-15 years, especially, rural India has witnessed kind of rise of women professionals in various spheres as frontline workers, as teachers, or self-help group members, and women professionals as, entrepreneurs, etc. Now, we know that women are not safe at home, but when women come out to public sphere, safety and security becomes an important concern. And there, the government has, good allocation of fund in programs like Mission Shakti, in which Mission Shakti has a scheme which provides safety and security as well as empowerment policies are there in this scheme. That, I think, was a good move. Then, as the NFHS 5 is showing that anemia is a big challenge in India, especially in rural India. About 57% women in the country in the reproductive age group are anemic, and similarly 67% children in the age group of, I think, 6 to 59 months are anemic, and that's a huge challenge. So in this backdrop, an impressive rise in budgetary allocation for Saksham, Anganwadi, and Poshan 2 was quite significant. This scheme got 21,000 crore, and this is critically significant for addressing anemia in the country. Then one more scheme was there to provide insurance coverage to Asha and Anganwadi workers under the Ayushman Bharat Yojana. And we know that frontline workers constitute a significant proportion of rural population, and they are not getting, really good remuneration. So this is a good move. Emphasis over cervical cancer, although it's like overall for every woman. That is good, but at the same time, this reference of this particular disease reminds us that awareness level about this particular disease is so low. So maybe we need special budgetary allocation to generate awareness on such disease, especially in rural India, and also facilitate on detection and treatment. So I would say that in sum, the interim budget reflects a rise in budgetary allocation for engendering policies and development. Rise in gender budget would be very beneficial for women in rural India, where female workforce participation has also increased remarkably. Now it's 37% overall. In rural India, it has remarkably increased. I'm sure schemes like Mudra Yojana and Lakhpati Didi would facilitate women in generating income opportunities in their home or around their home, which has been a major concern for women, especially younger women who are still engaged in their reproductive responsibilities. So that, we think, would help them in enhancing their participation in the economy. And finally, we also believe that share of rural development would reach to 6% at least in the full budget. And there would be more for the 27 crore registered Manarega worker in the post-election budget. Thank you so much. I hope I completed in 7-8 minutes whatever time I was allocated. Over to you, Dr. Rajakumar.
Thank you. Since Dr. Anamika will be leaving soon, if
I'll be here for half an hour for sure.
Half an hour, okay. Yeah. Okay. Now The second speaker will be Dr. Ramaju. Dr. Raman?
Yes, sir. I'm here. Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes. Good evening, all, and thanks for the opportunity to discuss about the budget. As earlier speakers said, it's an interim budget, so not much was expected, and we hope for a better budget once the elections are over. But within the budget, if we look at the key allocations, etc., not done as per the objectives which government was spelling out in the last 5 years. Say, for example, one of the key challenge always has been the increasing the incomes of the farmers. So doubling the farmers' income was supposed was the major driver, and we have seen that the incomes have not increased as projected, and no allocations have been made in terms of strengthening the agricultural systems. I would say this could be in terms of investments in agriculture. It could be in terms of subsidies which are given on various components, or it's also about creating systems which can increase the market access or increase the credit access to the farmers. If you look at the overall support systems which budget provides, not much allocations have been made. Certainly, say, for example, I would say agriculture credit was talked about 22 to 25 lakh crores is what they were talking about. But one of the key challenge in India has always been the tenant farmers who doesn't get access to the institutional credit. So nearly 30% of the nearly 30% of the farmers only get access to institutional credit. Rest of them depend on the private money lenders, and then that is increasing the burden on the farmers. And that's what is leading to the high indebtedness in the country. And there was a discussion, pre-budgetary discussion around coming up with a new policy for supporting tenant farmers. We were part of some of the discussions, and then many others. Some of you are here who are probably must be part of the discussions. But finally, when the budget is announced, it didn't make any appearance in the budgetary announcements. I think that's which is the major missing point, I would say. Second, the PM Kisan, which was started, say, before the last election as a flagship program, and which consumes nearly what major portion of the agriculture budget also. When it started, the idea was to look at, say, compensating the farmers for the income deficiency happening because of the various various flaws in the system. So it's not just to give away free money, but it's actually to uh, correct the problem which farmers are facing because of the inefficiencies of the other system. So it is income compensation. So if we look at from that point of view, 6 years back, nearly 5 years back, when it was announced as 6,000 rupees, that itself was very low, and there was no basis on which it was announced either. But when it is announced, at least we should go by correcting it to the inflation, so that now like the salaries of the people are corrected, like the minimum support prices are corrected, the basic income support also should be corrected. So it should be increased. And no such allocations have been made. No such announcement also has been made. In fact, the total allocation has come down. And when the basic income support measures were announced in agriculture, the it was all based on the land records. And many of us have brought to the notice of the government that it should be available to all cultivators, not based on the just land record. So obviously, absentee landlords should not get access to these such support measures, but it should actually go to the people who are actually doing the cultivation and then bearing the risk of the entire uncertainties in agriculture. So it didn't, no major change or announcement happened around these things. And another interesting area where the government again didn't do much is around the fertilizer subsidy. So fertilizer subsidy last year was supposed to have reached nearly 3 lakh crores, and government announced that if the fertilizer consumption is reduced by the states, 50% of the subsidy will be given as a grant to the state, so that state can use it for promotion of non-chemical approaches. So they called it as PM Pranam. But the allocation made is only about 1.68 lakh crores. So the budget itself, if more than 50% reduction happened, obviously, yeah, it's not going to translate into any benefit to the states, even if they make any reduction in fertilizer use. So PM Pranam, while they announced, and they clearly said there is no separate budgetary allocation being made, existing agricultural subsidies will be repurposed and then will be given to the states. So it is not going to happen because now the subsidy is already reduced significantly, and then the subsidy will be spent on again subsidizing the chemical fertilizers. So that is a one major thing which we need to look for. Another important area, in fact, in the last budget they announced was the natural farming. So India being facing with a serious problem with the climate change, and also looking at the India's commitment to go net zero by 2070 and 50% reduction in the emissions by 2030. India top focus should be in terms of reducing fertilizer use, energy use, and chemical use. I think that major focus should come from the support which farmers gets in making the transition. So that natural farming was announced as a flagship program by the government of India, and this was announced last December. Prime Minister announced it, and then we expected that in the last budget there will be allocation made, and they made a very meager allocation, few hundred crores was made, and then the plan was to reach out to 1 crore farmers. So 1 crore farmers over 5 years, if you calculate, I think what was allocated comes to a few hundred rupees for farmers, and obviously it is not going to help anyone. And last 1 year this was not spent. And this year again, the same announcement is made, but no allocations have been made. So it also shows that it has ended up as a lip service and probably uh, may not be utilizing it. And two more issues which were brought up by earlier speakers also. India, there's anemia is becoming a serious problem. Nutritional security is becoming a major problem. And there are 2, 3 important research papers which came up in the last few years, which shows that the nutrient deficiencies are coming because of two significant reasons which one need to understand. One, it is coming because the soils are becoming deficient. Soils are becoming deficient in nutrients. So obviously crops are not having any nutrition. So people who are consuming it are also not having the nutrition. So if the area is anemic, the area is iron deficient, the soils are iron deficient, the crops are not having iron, and the people are also not having iron. I think that's one significant understanding we got from the various research papers which are published in the last few years. Another very shocking paper which came couple of months back is from the ICR itself, which talks about the varieties which are now released as an improved varieties. They are not able to absorb the nutrients even if they are present in the soil, which means we have spoiled our soils. We are also have spoiled our germplasm, basically varieties. In that situation, if we don't have a significant focus on making a transition in agriculture in terms of more sustainable production systems, and also looking at improving soil fertility and then improving the better varieties, our nutrition security is not going to be addressed. And looking at short-term solution as biofortification as a solution has already caused enough problems. I think there should be a re-look into this whole thing, and I feel there will be a transition on this. I think very, very important, significant transition should happen here. Second issue is also about the seasonal migration, which the earlier speaker has clearly mentioned. Seasonal migration is increasing due to the COVID we have seen. Seasonal migration is increasing because agricultural incomes are going down. That part we need to certainly acknowledge. Total income coming from cultivation is only around 30% for farmers today at the national level. And if you look at different states, it's much lower. Andhra Pradesh, for example, is only 20%. So in that situation, unless we focus on creating opportunities in the rural areas where either livelihoods will be increased or employment opportunities increase, it is not going to work at all. And continuing the same also is not going to work. Say NRG also started nearly 14 years back, and in the same village, how many years they are going to do the same work? So there should be also probably a relook into the way what kind of works can be done under NREGS, and then how we can look at as a long-term solution in terms of creating employment opportunities. We won't look at that and then only as a band-aid kind of program, which NREG is today, that you will provide, say, 100 days employment kind of thing, and that can work in emergency situations, and then in a situation where nothing else works. But what is your mainstream program to increase incomes of the farmers? I think that's a key question which need to be addressed, and I hope at least the full budget will focus on these things. I'll stop here.
Thank you, Dr. Raman. The point that you have highlighted about doubling farmers' income, for some strange reasons, we did not see much of it being said in the budget, though we talked about several other things. You also covered the aspects related to tenancy, but don't you think these are all some institutional reforms which will have to be addressed?
So
We'll come back to this point.
So there was a discussion that this budget is going to come with a new plan for tenant farmers access to credit. It's not about solving the tenancy issue, but it's about creating extending credit to tenant farmers. There was a discussion happened, but it didn't work out. That's the point I'm trying.
Maybe we'll have to wait till the full budget.
Related to budget, yes, not the institutional reforms. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Now, may I invite Dr. Donthi? Yes, sir. Please.
Thank you. Allow me to share the screen. Okay, I think Ramu has laid bare what is not happening, especially with regard to the budget. And I'm going to focus on handloom sector. But before that, I think, we are discussing interim budget. And most probably this webinar will also be an interim webinar, because again, we may have to come together and discuss in July 2024 after the elections. So even our analysis should be taken as interim in that context. Now, the one puzzling thing is this budget. There have been 4 interim budgets since 97, because you see, elections are in May. So, related to that, there are only 4 interim budgets. And before 97, from 1958, there are 6 interim budgets. So overall, we had 10 interim budgets. Now, even though we had 10 interim budgets, we never had an interim economic survey. If you have seen the what was released on 30th January, it says this is a report by the Economic Division of the Ministry of Finance, and it's not the regular full economic survey. So it's almost saying that this is also an interim economic survey. Now, this is what is puzzling and probably lends credence to people saying that this budget is election budget and government is masking a lot of negatives within the economy, which is going down, spiraling downwards. So in that sense, I think whatever data has been mentioned in this interim economic survey report, I think government itself has admitted this is interim in that sense, and it's not a full economic survey. So whatever conclusions government is trying to tell us, I think they are interim too, and probably they are not true as well. I'll give you one example: is handloom sector. Now, handloom sector is a major rural employment sector for the past several years. If you look at the data, 2019-20, the fourth handloom survey, they say there are 26 lakh handloom weavers in India right now. Now, this means the 3 crore handloom weavers, which were mentioned in the 1987, the first survey, has decreased. So this does not reflect in either, all those rural employment data which we keep looking at. So I think what Dr. Anamika also mentioned, that out migration does not get reflected, especially for sectors like non-farm rural employment, like handloom sector. Now coming to budget, I've been monitoring handloom budget for the past several years. So this is a 28-year data you can see. When you compare with the textile allocation, Indian textile sector has multiple subsectors, and one of them is the handloom sector. So we have handloom, powerloom, and mill sector majorly, and of course garment sector. So the textile allocations, within the textile allocation, handloom allocations are mentioned. So if you can see here, from 97, 98, the textile allocations have been increasing, but handloom allocations have been decreasing, both in terms of percentage of the textile allocation and also absolute allocation. So in 97, 98, it was 197 crores for handloom sector, and it was almost 25% of textile sector. And today in 2024-25, the interim budget, it is 200 crores. So over a 28-year period, from 197 crores, the handloom budget is still 200 crores. So that again shows that government attention on handloom sector is waning, and there are a lot of policy changes, over a 25-year period, basically linked to agreement on textile and clothing, which was signed in 1995 under World Trade Organization, and then the a lot of changes. If you look at in 99, 2000, for the first time, Government of India imposed CENVAT, Central Value Added Tax, on handloom products. There were a lot of protests. Then the Congress government came in 2004. They said they are going to reimburse that. So yeah, but still there was a tax for the first time in the entire history of textiles. Handloom sector faced this tax. Eventually, Manmohan Singh government removed that. But then later on, GST was imposed when the GST regime started in 2017. So one is, on the one hand, the taxing has increased, and the allocation to handloom sector has been decreasing in real terms as well. So this is again is reflected in employment going down in handloom sector, and many families, in fact, handloom families have been reduced to hand-to-mouth existence. They have to shift to, street level jobs. Many of them became watchmen, or from a skill-based employment, they became unskilled labor in urban, semi-urban areas. So this is, one thing which we are looking at here. Just to clarify, 2022-23, this looks very high, that is almost 12,000 crores for textile sector, but it includes 9,243 crores for Cotton Corporation of India for procurement of cotton. Again, the budget practices sometimes are very puzzling, and we
Dr.
can't understand.
Narasimha,
Sorry.
Dr. Narasimha Reddy,
Yeah.
maybe in another 1 minute or 2 minutes, you can.
Okay.
Already taken 11 minutes.
Yeah, this I think just 2 more slides.
Yeah, please.
This here you can see. I just calculated the allocation and year-on-year inflationary growth. So this light orange thing we can see. If you add year-on-year inflationary increase with the 97, 98 as a base year, this year handloom sector should have got at least 2,000 crores, just under 3,000 crores as allocation. Just we go by the inflation, but still, it is down only 200 crores. Now, finally, I just want to bring up the linkage between policy and allocations. So, government allocations are decreasing because there is this national fiber policy which was formulated in around 2008-9. It was a draft, but we don't know when it was approved. But government has been practicing that. Basically, it says man-made fiber should be encouraged, and natural fibers like cotton, silk, wool, all these should be discouraged. That's the kind of policy which was formulated. And as part of that only, GST has been imposed on the handloom sector, which is 12%, and their competing sectors get only 5%. So, and now as a climate action commitment, we are talking of decarbonizing economy, decarbonizing textile sector. So handloom should be, because it is environment friendly, it is employment oriented and local economy. I think handloom should be included as part of climate action commitments, so that there are more capital flows into that, and the rural economy also gets strengthened based on that. So I'll stop here, and we can take questions later.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Narasimha Reddy, for covering one important segment of rural economic activity, that is handloom sector. And the crisis in handloom sector is lingering for quite some time. I think for decades together. This is a sector which requires a lot more attention. In fact, this is also one sector which is bestowed with a lot of traditional knowledge. And with that comes a lot of constraints also. So some of the rural sector initiatives like SIGs, whether they will be able to make much inroads in protecting or in safeguarding the handloom in the rural sector remains still a vital question. Anyway, we'll come back to this aspect a little later.
There are several initiatives and possibilities, but basically the government allocation is being reduced, and now it's only one scheme which is there. Earlier there were 14 schemes. They reduced it to only one scheme, and that is training the skilled weavers on how to improve their skills. So that's a kind of thing government is looking at.
Thanks for bringing out this. Dr. Parashram?
Yes, I'm there, sir.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, good evening. So I'm looking at this budget in a different perspective. I'm looking at this budget, what will be this interim budget will have a long-term impact on the agriculture and the economy. See, whenever we talk about the agriculture, and whenever we talk about doubling farmers' income, the major hurdles that we are not achieving still the doubling farmers' income is that our agriculture marketing is not strengthened. To strengthen the agriculture marketing, the government of India has a very ambitious initiative, that is the e-market. So I'm happy and I'm very positive that government of India is talking again and again that we need to strengthen the e-marketing, e-NAM. So in this budget, the government has focused a lot on e-marketing. So I'm feeling that this will have a long-term impact as far as the rural marketing is concerned. That will return the farmers the good amount of money. Second, I feel that agriculture is not just about agriculture crops. I feel that along with the main agriculture, there are allied sectors. For example, fish. India has a 7,500 kilometer oceans. Till India does not achieve its full potential. To achieve the ocean's potential in terms of fishery export, in terms of fishery processing, in terms of fishery productions, we need to focus much on the fishery sector. So Pan Pradhan Matsya Yojana is touching these points. Pan Pradhan Matsya Yojana trying to strengthen the fishery sector, Indian fishery sector, global competitive, so that we can export the fishery farmers' income will increase. So these 2-3 aspects will try to pay the fishery sectors in a very long way. Third, I feel that which is very important, and I feel that this budget will have a long-term impact that India has already committed for zero carbon emission. So we want to when we want to go for the zero carbon emissions or net zero impact, it is in that process need to do so many activities that you have to reduce your fertilizers. You have to go for your carbon, you have to see your carbon farming, you have to reduce your emissions, you have to go for this solar energy. And you want to go for it, there is not bioeconomy. So ultimately, bioeconomy will be into the picture. And if we see the bioeconomy, the entire base of the bioeconomy is the agriculture or agriculture. So I feel that having the target in the budget that we want to go for the net zero emissions, that the bioeconomy will into the picture. So these 3-4 aspects, I feel that this budget will have a long-term impact. And of course, there are some lacunas into that government has to be look onto it. So that is there. But the positive aspect is that the budget is looking from the long-term perspective in terms of bioeconomy, in terms of utilizing the potential of the fishery sector, non-agriculture sector, in terms of extending the agriculture marketing. I feel that this budget is in the right way. Whatever the lacuna is there, whatever the Professor, the earlier speaker mentioned, the problems of the migration workers. The migration workers' problems will be never fixed unless our agriculture is competitive or agriculture is to that extent that they will give the income and the employment generation. This thing has to be taken care of. But in the long-term perspective, in terms of bioeconomy, in terms of fishery, in terms of rural marketing, or in terms of providing the income support to the farmers. And if you see the overall, the budget 2024 budget is already increasing compared to last year. And second, this budget is also talk about the animal husbandry. This budget is talk about the fishery sector, dairy sector. So agriculture, bioeconomy, allied sector, in that context, I feel this budget has a long-term impact on the Indian agriculture. Thank you. This is my presentation.
Thank you for being very brief. Now, Professor Nalin, Bharti. I think there is some crosstalk is going. Yeah, Professor Nalin. Yes, sir.
Yeah, hope I am audible now.
Yes.
So many points have already been made by the previous speakers. So I would like to just focus on some of the issues which has not been pointed out as a part of this discussion. So first important thing which comes to our mind is farmers' welfare. So if we see the PM Kisan Yojana, this is also direct financial assistance to 11.8 crore farmers annually. And also the PM Fasal Bima Yojana, which provides the crop insurance to 4 crore farmers. So, and along with this, if we see farmers' welfare in the larger context, and when we include this farmers' welfare with new technological support that comes as a part of the electronic national agriculture marketing, we see that integration of 1,361 mandis serving 1.8 crore farmers with a trading volume of 3 lakh crore. So we cannot say that this particular budget is not looking very keenly the farmers' welfare aspect. It is indeed looking this particular farming activities and farmers' welfare keenly. And but at the same time, we also see that the previous budget was looking for more, you can say, village or centric or rural centric. But this budget is more towards making rural India more inclusive. So, in that sense, women empowerment, uh, significant focus is on women empowerment, PM Awas Yojana, despite challenges in past in terms of COVID, an additional 2 crore house planned for the next 5 years. That is also making the rural India more inclusive to the inclusive India. Because if within the rural India we will not have these activities, we cannot have the inclusive India. So making inclusive India is impossible without making inclusive rural India. That I feel that is the focus, and that is also now we are also finding a new type of technological, you can say technological support, or you can see that some new initiatives has been taken. For example, the rooftop solarization scheme, the Muft Bijli scheme initiative to provide up to 300 units of free electricity monthly for 1 crore household. This is also a new dimension of this budget. Apart from that, government is also prioritizing the micro and the small and medium enterprises, and somehow if rural realities has to be reshaped, we have to also see this type of steps which has been taken by the government. Maternal and child care, Saksham Anganwadi and Posan 2, the consolidation of maternal and child care schemes for streamlining the implementation, such as this Saksham Anganwadi and Posan 2 scheme for enhanced nutrition delivery and early childhood development, is also reflected in this budget. Apart from that, as I'm again focusing that technological uh, uh, technological support or sense of technology in development, it has been also seen in this budget, and U-Win platform for immunization management and intensified missions for the Indradhanush nationwide, and rapid rollout of Ayushman Bharat to cover ASA workers, Anganwadi workers, and helpers. So, linking the budget with the new technology is also one of the new dimensions of this budget. At the same time, nano urea we have seen previously, but this time nano DAP. And apart from that, the agriculture sector is having the this type of new steps to make agroclimate, new agroclimate zone, and at the same time, formulation of Atmanirbhar oil seeds Abhiyan for self-reliance in mustard, groundnut, soya bean, and sunflower. So somehow, if we see the dependency of oil seeds, edible oil from the import market, so such steps may also reduce our import dependency, and it can also reduce our uh, payment for the imported items. In terms of dairy development, if we see some of the comprehensive support programs for dairy farmers focusing on the disease control, and productivity management. And building on the success of the existing schemes like Rashtriya Gokul Mission and National Livestock Mission is still the priority for the government. Matsya Sampada Yojana, our previous speaker was also mentioning about this. Implementation of Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana for increased productivity and seafood exports, and establishment of 5 integrated aqua parks for fisheries development is the part of the budget speech. Also, the Lakpati Didi empowerment and including the extension of Lakpati Didi target from 2 crore to 3 crore, adding 1 more crore in this scheme. Ayushman Bharat allocation has been also increased. Solar power grid, the allocation for solar power grid has been also increased, and this increased is by 71%. Ayushman Bharat solar power grid increased by 71%. Ayushman Bharat allocation increased by 4.2%. National Livelihood Mission Ajivika allocation for this financial year is 15,047 crore, approximately 6% more than the previous year. So, what I see in this budget is, as Prime Minister always saying that the Garib, Mahila, Yuba, and youth, and the Annadata, the farmer. So these are the priority areas, and in this budget also, we see that the Finance Minister's speech also talks about these 4 major priority areas. And these, whether it is a Garib or Mahila, Yuba, and Annadata, it has a great connectivity with the rural India. And majority of Garib, majority of Mahilaएं, majority of Yuba, and majority of Annadata still lives in the rural part of this country. So,
Professor Nalin?
Yeah, I'm just winding up. So, the slogan by the government that Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas is this budget reflects that a major focus has to be given to those areas, especially those programs, which makes rural India more inclusive. Because if we have to look for inclusive India, we cannot do that without making inclusive rural India. So Har Ghar Jal scheme, housing for all, universal electricity, cooking gas, and reaching every household. So these are the schemes which has been reflected in the current budget, and I hope that this interim budget may be further supported with a more focused way to see the rural realities and to enhance the rural empowerment of the rural women, rural youth, rural poor, and the farmers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nalin. Yes, you have made a very strong point that growth needs to be inclusive. Now, the question is how to measure whether growth has remained inclusive or not. We have to see the rural realities. So, becoming more of rural inclusive is one yardstick we can use. But then we have to see whether it actually contributes to the welfare in the rural areas or not, which would mean that the purchasing power in the rural area has to go up, maybe or not only by strengthening the agriculture, but also by providing ways for diversification of non-farm sector. So looking at the budget, probably the larger question is, of course, it's an interim budget. We can't expect drastic announcements in this. But then the larger question is whether the policies of government is leading that. Right? That's a larger question. Anyway, thanks for highlighting your perspective on the budget. Thank you so much. Now we are having one more speaker here, Dr. Javed. Yeah, over to you, sir.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. So I'll be speaking, this rural realities from the perspective of budget, governance, and accountability. So, if we see this budget or like many other previous budget announcement, so we can say that in rural areas the people are suffering from declining their consumption, and also we know that a large part of the rural population are going to be dependent on the PM Garib Kalyan Yojana, and there is a problem of inflation. So in that way, if we talk about the government initiative, so I can say that whatever programs were initiated long back have been some kind of select priorities, like for rural housing. Yeah, of course, priority is there, but still I can say that government needs to do more. Like whatever amount we are giving them, that is, I think, not adequate if we take the inflation into account. For Manrega, there is a need for higher wages under that. Mere just allocation of some crore will not going to address the problem of the declining real income. So in that way, I would say that rural areas also need some other services. That is the health and education. So if we see the social sector spending, so it is declining. It was around 23% of the total public spending in 2015-16. Now it has reached to around 18%. So there is a less focus on the social sector program, whether it is education, nutrition, and other support measures. Further, I can say that health is always important priority. The scholarship programs, which are directly benefiting to different segments, scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, disability group, OBCs, minorities, is still we are seeing that for the days hostlers, we are just paying roughly 1,000 rupees per month, which is very inadequate. Whatever scholarship programs we are running, they are facing the design problem in terms of quota, of the number of scholarship, the parental income. Apart from that, I would say that when we talk about the rural realities, we also need to assess that do we have the governance system there in place, and then how much these institutions are functional. I mean the Panchayati Raj institutions. RBI has brought out a report in which we found that the panchayats have their own income just 1% of their total receipts. Many of these states are not devolving the funds, function and functionaries. Whatever resources government of India is pumping, that is beyond the control of the rural local governments. We always discuss about the DBT, which is against the decentralization, which is against the fiscal federalism. So we are making our rural local governance institutions non-functional, and there is a growing centralization. Further, I would say that there should be a kind of coherence in terms of planning, decentralized planning. So we have this dismantled planning commission. I would not say that planning commission was fulfilling everything, but somehow there was an institution. We don't have functional state level planning commission, planning boards. Only DPCs are functioning, but there is a disjunction between the state and center. So, in this era in which we are living, actually we are focusing some single individuals, though we talk about 140 crore population. So, whatever we are saying, there should be a participatory, there should be a kind of inclusive, and planning is the key where, we can take the need of the people. But for that, there should be a kind of, decentralization of functions, funds and functionaries. And whatever, centrally sponsored schemes we are running, that should be implemented, that should be planned by our local government. It should not be done by Delhi. And for any, sustenance of any initiative, any community, any society, there should be a kind of decentralization. So maybe we can praise, we can criticize, but from my point of view, budget is not the only, solution. But apart from that, we need to focus on the governance institutions. We need to focus on planning. We need to focus on people's participation. We need to focus on accountability. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. I have the data I can share with you. Like previous speakers have already shared so many data for regarding, schemes, budget speech, ministry data. But here, I think I wanted to give the larger perspective. So thank you, Chair. Thank you so much, Dennis sir.
Sir, you are on mute.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Javid. Dr. Ritvika, any more speaker is there?
No, sir, I think we have.
Okay. Okay. So friends, we heard 5 speakers talking about different aspects of budget and what they hold for the rural sector of Indian economy. Now, there are various aspects which have been flagged off during the last 70 minutes. I have a, if there is any question, we'll take few questions from the floor. Participants? I'm seeing one question posted here. It is basically addressed to me. It is essentially talking about Panchayat Raj institutions, PRIs. The question is, the budget does not address PRI related issues adequately. So what's your comment? All that I can say is, see, though Panchayat Raj institutions are vital, when we look at the administration from the point of view of from the point of view of grassroots, what is more important to strengthen PRI is every state should actually appoint a state finance commission. The way we are having now, 16th finance commission has been appointed. If you go through the 15th finance commission report, they had actually provided, I think they have also provided some grant, and they have also advised the state governments to appoint state finance commission. Now, only when we see the state finance commissions taking off the ground, right, we won't be able to see much progress in strengthening this Panchayat Raj institutions, because because the state finance commission, I believe strongly, they will actually provide for a devolution of fund, and many Panchayat Raj we know, right? It's all state-specific success stories. Like Panchayat Raj in Kerala is far more successful compared to few other states in the country. They're functional, but to what extent they are effective? And if you are going to if you are going to assess the effectiveness of Panchayat Raj, obviously what is very important is the fund allocation. So in my view, if all the state governments appoint State Finance Commission and work out a formula for devolution of fund, we may not be able to see a lot of groundbreaking happening with respect to this kind of rural democratic institutions. This is my personal view. And this is an area which has been addressed by 15th Finance Commission. I'm sure that 16th Finance Commission also will take note of the status of appointment of State Finance Commission, and they will do something about it.
So there is one more question in the chat box.
Yeah.
Sir, it is asking about the allocation of Ayushman Bharat scheme, whether it is efficient or not, and the central government schemes and state government schemes should be synchronized in order to for their better implementation.
Yeah. Is there anyone in the audience who had done any kind of impact assessment on this topic? Dr. Raman or Professor Nalin, have you done any kind of impact assessment on this aspect? Okay.
No, we have not done any impact assessment.
But what's your take on this question, sir?
Ayushman Bharat, and the participant is asking about whether state government and central government schemes should be synchronized or not. This is one of the question, no?
Yes.
So my take on this is, we are in the middle of sustainable development goal set by United Nations. And more recently, I have presented a paper in a conference organized by Institute of Human Development, where I was talking about what type of indicator the state is having and what type of indicators we are having at the central government level. And we found that there is no alignment between the center and the state in terms of finding the implementation. It also tells us that there are different programs running at different level in different states. So this shows that we don't have basically same program running at the state level. So if we have to really see India developing, we should have a common program, and the same program should be running at the state level also. Because the center and state funding sometime in some of the programs there is a division between center and state. In some programs there is a complete allocation by the center. So in that case, we are not able to find out what is going on at the grassroots level. So state data indicates something else, central government data indicates something else, and the real scenario tells us something else. So we have not done any impact assessment, but with the indicator alignment data, we can tell you that whatever indicators we have in terms of development, these indicators are not aligned together between the center and the state level.
Can I come in? So
Yes.
like, yeah, so I am happy to take this question regarding the Ayushman Bharat. Yes, there is a assessment by the CAG which was done some time before. So that report need to be seen, in terms of implementation, in terms of budget availability, and CAG has pointed out several challenges in that. Of course, inadequacy of budget is there, and there is a less studies on this. But here I would say that it has two components: the Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana and this Health and Wellness Center. And still, I won't comment about the Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana because you have, heard about lots of, issues in the implementation and also the data problem in terms of coverage of beneficiaries. But Health and Wellness Center needs more money, and 15 Finance Commission is also providing some amount. But I have heard that in that there is no role of PRIs. Actually, line department is, doing the show. Second question with regard to synchronization. So, we have in terms of scheme, centrally sponsored scheme, central sector scheme, and state scheme. So usually when there is a double engine sarkar, so you will find there is a less state scheme. And many states, those who are in opposition, they have initiated their own state scheme. But those states who are implementing centrally sponsored schemes, most of the money of their budget is going for that. In that, they don't have any kind of say. For central sector scheme, of course, it is run by Government of India only. And with regard to synchronization, we need to reduce the centralization and the kind of, thinking, thought of our, population day by day, going towards a kind of bhakti and undemocratic thinking. I think it won't allow to synchronization. So when we talk about the budget and governance, it should be a kind of democratic thinking and thought. And earlier I mentioned that there is a need for planning from top to bottom. Top to bottom. And the thinking that India is being run by 1%, 2%, and they can run it for 50 years, I think it is going to harm for our
Dr. Javed,
public financing.
Yeah, Dr.
Thank you
Javed,
so much.
Yeah, thank you. Probably we can look at the same question in a different way. The question is whether the first part, whether it is sufficient or not. Yes, we need a lot more evidences to comment on that. But whether they can be central and state government schemes can be synchronized. We have to see which sector is being affected by this particular scheme. We know it is the health sector. Now, where does it actually fall under? Is it in the concurrent list or union list or state list? So that is the place where you have so long as it is in the state list, you will have problems of implementation, right? Definitely there is going to be a problem of implementation. Now, but whether the country requires this kind of scheme, yes, very much requires. So what needs to be done? Should we shift the subject health from state list to concurrent so that you have some participation of the union as well as state, right, in improving the health delivery care, right? It is all a bit of larger question, but at this point of time, philosophically, if you ask whether it should be synchronized, yes, considering the larger interest and the impact it can actually make on the well-being of the country, yes, it should be synchronized, right, in a manner that should be seen beyond whether a subject is under state list or concurrent list or in the union list. That's what I would say. Professor Santosh, you have joined now. Do you have something to share with us?
No, it's very interesting discussion going on, Professor. I'm happy and sorry about being late here, but in bits and pieces I could join in and I could hear a few things on this very idea of synchronization and uniformity, etc. I think yes, one has to be very mindful of the fact that there are villages of all kinds. The rural doesn't have a one sense of template. What works in Punjab villages will not work in villages of Bihar. So there are this, rather than look at it from the central state understanding. I think it's important to understand the diversity of the landscape that we are talking about, the hugeness of that landscape. So my sense is that just the last bit, that is one thing is that there is this heavy dependence on or the Manrega, for example. That Manrega framework of rural development has to at some point will have to be looked at differently, because it also suggests that there's a deeper distress in the rural areas, rural countryside, and that has to be too. How does one go about it? With the paucity of time, I thought, a good thing is that the government has allocated more money to the Ministry of Rural Development and Family Welfare, Farmers Welfare, which is a welcome sign. But at the same time, if you look at the internal thing, for example, in terms of crop insurance, etc., there has been some kind of reduction in the allocation, also in some other schemes as well. But what is more important is, for example, in the government recognizes the budget after budget the centrality of women workforce, as we have been discussing the feminization of labor force in the countryside. So there has been this focus on the Lakpati Didis and all that. That actually brings in the element of gender at the center of our discussion and understanding. But I think most important part is that how does one look at the larger picture of rural development, in the sense of how much one should do and what would be the roadmap for that kind of transformation. And that is where what I meant to say when I said we have to look beyond the Manrega, which is that was an element that's an idea which works for the poverty alleviation, etc. But I think we really want a holistic kind of rural reconstruction. We'll have to look at the larger roadmap, and that I'd like to suggest to this very stuff, that we have to look at the agribusiness model at some point of time, not in a very corporatized sense that I'm using the word agribusiness, but in a manner in which the farm income and the tendency towards non-farm, etc., needs to be kind of we have to factor in our understanding. So I think just this much I would like to say, but I'm sorry I missed some of this. But I will look at the
Dr.
Thanks.
Santosh, thank you for sharing your thoughts. Now, if there is no more other question, then we'll just go for the final roundup. Dr. Narasimha Reddy, you can take about a minute and give us your final thought on the subject. Yes, sir.
No, I wanted to go deeper because when we are talking rural employment, this natural
just 1
fiber
minute, sir.
policy.
Just 1 minute. We have to wind up in another 3-4 minutes. Just 1 minute.
Yeah.
Yes.
So natural fiber policies, they support, cotton support 10 crore employment. So government, wants to, decrease the cotton garmenting. The entire sector, they want to reduce and increase man-made fiber, which is, polluting fiber. So I think we need to highlight this and get the government to focus on this, because if you're talking of employment and environment, I think we need to promote a natural fiber.
Thank you, sir. And Dr. Narasimha Reddy, and we are talking about textiles as a sector, and this sector cries for solution because of several structural rigidities. So unless we are able to address them, because this about textile, we have been hearing a lot more stories during the last few decades, and the stories continue, right? What we tend to believe is a lot more issues are structural, right, which needs to be addressed, but
No, that has been, that's a problem, rightly said. That structure is being influenced and changed by the government in favor of one kind of production. So that's a monolith, and that will be very detrimental for Indian economy.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Raman, your final thoughts on the topic?
Yes,
quickly.
You mentioned while the wishful thinking goes that agriculture will get better allocations, more and more is going only for the PM Kisan, and even that is very, very nominal. and a lot money which need to be actually invested is not happening. So I think more investment to agriculture should come in, because the PM Kisan is a compensatory mechanism. So, and that should be focused. And unless this happens, things are not going to work. So wishful statements are happening, but it's not converting into an action because proper allocations are not being made. That's what I would say.
Thank you, sir. Professor Nalin, last 1 minute.
Yeah. So I feel that this interim budget is one step in terms of making rural India more inclusive, because uh, with the allocation and also with the new technological implementation which is happening in terms of rural immunization or in terms of Krishi Mandi, we are finding that new types of
schemes,
new type of initiatives has been taken by the government, and I find this as one of the major initiative for making rural India more inclusive.
Thank you. Dr. Javed, last, you can take a minute.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Just for my final remarks, I would say that since we have a larger policy framework of sustainable development goals, and we have committed long back the decentralized planning and budgeting. So for better rural realities, I think these institutions and these policy frameworks should work in a better way with adequate finances and better data management. Because whatever we are saying, data backup is not there. So data is important thing. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Javed. Now, let me take a minute or two to close the session. Now, as we begin the session, I had just highlighted three important aspects. One is how the rural wage rates, whether we talk about agriculture sector related or non-farm related wage rate, though they are rising, but the rate at which rural sector is facing the inflation is much more. So the real wage rate is not rising much. And second, this problem is compounded by another problem, which is lately agriculture sector is facing. That is, it doesn't have enough, safeguards against the climate change. For instance, now the monsoon failure is there. Now, what's happening to agriculture? The growth rate is going to flatten now. So, what are we going to do about all this, right? Now, these are the larger questions which become very important, and that's how we understand the rural realities. Though we say that half of the India or more than half of the India is rural sector, now somebody was talking about data. Now, how do you understand the rural India itself? Is it going to be based on 2011 census, or is it based on our traditional understanding of rural India, or what is it? Now, when we look at some of the statistics coming from, let's say, on bank-related statistics, what they consider even outgrowth, right, as part of urban centers, right? So now, even understanding the jurisdiction of the rural India itself, I think it is going to change in the time to come. And more importantly, the institutions necessary to harness the growth of rural sector, that has to be strengthened. In that context, somebody raised a question on public, this Panchayat Raj. It's an important question. 15th Finance Commission tried to address some of those issues. Let's see what 16th Finance Commission, what are the incentives they are going to provide for state governments to ensure adequate allocation of fund in the manner that we see from the center to states through the recommendations of Finance Commission. Now, thank you so much. Many speakers brought out some very important points. More importantly, there is a need to arrest the migration from rural sector to urban sector. And this is possible through strengthening the agriculture sector. And how do we strengthen? We need to actually ensure a lot more safeguards against climate change. And another aspect of strengthening the rural sector is diversifying, helping the rural sector to diversify their non-farm sector, which actually the unemployment there actually drives people out of rural area, and therefore it is one of the major contributory factors for migration into urban sector. And the fiscal policies, we know that they have to actually they can generate, if appropriately designed, they can actually enable a lot more employment generation. So the design of the fiscal policy, whether it be talk about agriculture sector or rural sector or concerned with any other ministry, the way we talk about gender budget, now it's time we also talk about rural budget. So what each ministry is going to spend in the rural sector. And in a way, if we make this framework very clear, the way we are talking about gender budget, like how each money spent, right, is accounted in terms of gender. If you are going to account it in terms of rural vis-a-vis urban sector, then that will also help us to strengthen the institutions and also enable the process of understanding what's happening in the rural sector. Right. With this few observations,
There is another question in the chat box.
Yes.
It has been asked that do we need PMO-like structure in the states as well in order to strengthen the state policy so that change in state government cannot interrupt the growth of state?
Yeah, this is larger a political question. I don't know whether any speaker would like to answer. I may not want to use this forum to say anything, but all that I can say is, yes, every state governance is very important. These days, we talk about governance as an important tool to deliver welfare to people. It's very important, right? So whether we talk at the state or at the center, right, we need a very transparent and office which is more accountable to people. This is the larger intake, but the more specific things, probably I would suggest Dr. Arjun convene another panel discussion on the same topic. Thank you, Dr. Arjun, once again for bringing us together. I think it was a good interaction what we had. Thank you, Dr. Arjun. Back over to you.
Of course, thank you. Thank you, sir. We'll just proceed for a formal vote of thanks. Ritvika, please go ahead with that.
So as we come to the end of today's discussion, I, Ritvika, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, would like to propose the formal vote of thanks. On behalf of IMPRI Center for Habitat, Urban and Regional Studies, I would like to thank all of you for attending today's deliberation, a panel discussion on rural realities and interim budget 2024-25. We are grateful to our chair, Dr. J. Dennis Rajakumarji, and all of the panelists for this session. Ramanjaneyulu GV, Dr. Parashram Patil, Professor Santosh K. Singh, Dr. Donthi Narasimha Reddy, Dr. Anamika Priyadarshini, Professor Nalin Bharti, Dr. Javed Alam Khan for taking part in the discussion and enlightening us. We thank all of our participants who have raised pertinent questions and actively participated in today's deliberation. We are grateful if you are watching us later on our YouTube channel or listening to us on our various podcasts or reading our publications. You may also find more thematic events and book discussions under IMPRI Web Policy Talk series. We hope you continue to join in future to our IMPRI Web Policy Talk and Web Policy Learning. Wishing you a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.